What's up, YouTube? I'm Trent McCare. I'm your host, Lean to the Left podcast. This is season 1, episode 3, a podcast where I and future guests talk about local and national politics in an effort to drive conversation in a way that helps 99% of America, which I believe is through progressive policies. Before we jump in the news of the week today, I wanted to do something different. I'm going to do a little monologue and I'm going to talk to the 75 million Americans who voted for Donald Trump. All right. Now, obviously, as you've learned through the first 2 episodes and all of my other content, I abhor Donald Trump. But I really don't fault a large percentage of you for voting for him, right? You have been lied to. That's the reality, right? The promises you were given, promises made, promises kept, that kind of line is a joke when it comes to Donald Trump and the entire Republican Party, honestly. I was watching a broadcast of a British radio show the other day, and they were going over a lot of COVID-19 status, and I also wanted to learn about some Brexit information. And one thing that they went over had just an insane amount of parallels, and that is the lies associated with Brexit and the lies I believe are associated with kind of Donald Trump and the Republican Party as a whole right now. So Brexit is looking like a disaster, just to give you an update. No deal on the horizon. Lies at every level. The Prime Minister, all the Brexit leaders guaranteed that there wouldn't be a no deal Brexit. Guaranteed that everybody's lives would be improved by Brexit. And I think Donald Trump made a lot of those similar promises to Americans, right? He understands that there are a huge portion of Americans that are living below the poverty line, that have seen their income and wages and wealth decrease in the world around them through what I would say is pretty close to no fault of their own, right? Donald Trump just taps right into that vein of what's wrong, what's going on, my life's getting worse. And then he blames it on Mexicans, right? He blames it on immigrants. He blames it on Democrats, demon rats, as he calls them, right? He blames them on Obama and Nancy Pelosi and just everything, right? He told you what you wanted to hear, right? He told you that keeping the immigrants out would make your neighborhood safer, even if you lived in Pennsylvania, right? He told you that tax cuts would put money in your pockets when it's been really obvious that might have saved you about $50 last year, 2018, 2019, when the rich put billions of dollars into their pocket, right? All those stock buybacks, did you benefit from those? Yeah, your 401k went up a little bit, but does that really help your day-to-day? Is that you can't see that money for decades, right? Your day-to-day is getting worse. Every day you are going to the store and more money is coming out of your pocket. And he told you the Democrats, if elected, right, we're going to come murder you. They're literally Donald Trump and Republican-backed ad spots from the 2020 election that if you elected Joe Biden and other Democrats, that BLM and Antifa would break into your house and you would call 911 and nobody would answer the phone, right? Well, we're a couple weeks into this presidency and I haven't had any BLM rioters breaking into my home where I couldn't call the police. Right? That's just not going to happen. It's obvious that that's not going to happen. But they lied to you. The president of the United States, the single greatest leader position, right? Not individual, of the free world, told you something and you believed it. To me, that's understandable, right? That's not something to be ashamed of. But the problem is now we're seeing that these are lies. Right? There's no anarchy in the street. Your life didn't get ostensibly worse in 3 weeks, 2 weeks, right? And in fact, to me, it looks like it's getting better, right? The COVID is coming down. Vaccine rollout is better by the day, right? You can just see from the rhetoric in politics that it's already headed in the right direction. And then let's talk about the big apple in the room, right? Just the obvious is coronavirus. Donald Trump lied to your face. The 75 million Americans that voted for him, he lied to your face for a year since last January. You know this. You can listen to calls of him on the phone talking with other people in private, telling them how bad it's going to be, how devastating. And then he lied to you about masks, said masks don't work, right? Kept bringing up over and over and over again how Dr. Fauci and other scientists in the beginning may have made a comment about mask effectiveness or mask utilization, prioritizing nurses. But that still exists today, right? I literally have coworkers, people that I meet on the street, people that I talk to who don't believe in masks. Yesterday, I talked to somebody who doesn't believe in masks. That's because you were lied to. And I get it, right? These are people that you trust. People that are supposed to have your best interests at heart. People that are supposed to be protecting you, keeping you safe. But instead, they're killing you. And you need to know that, right? And then they told you the COVID would be gone, right? He told you it would be gone in February, a few cases. It would be gone by Easter. It would be gone by this summer. Oh, the heat will kill it. It didn't. It came back, and it killed your family, and it killed your friends, and it killed 450,000 Americans, more than World War II, rapidly approaching the Spanish flu, which again was in 1908. 18. Sorry. And it's a wonder that we haven't made improvements since then, right? And the worst part is that these Republican leaders aren't ignorant. They're not ignorant to the lies of election fraud. They're not ignorant to the lies of COVID. They're probably not even ignorant to the lies of global warming. But they're malicious. They're malicious lies, and they're manipulating you. And I hope that you watch this show and can come away, not just this show, but going forward, and can come away with some knowledge that you didn't get from whatever sources that you're currently getting it from. And now what is the Republican Party transitioning to, right? Donald Trump's not around. We have a different environment under Joe Biden, and you have a different Republican Party, right? One that is being led by Marjorie Taylor Greene, a congresswoman who attacks children on the street over school shootings that they are victims of. A person who accuses the Rothschilds of starting fires in California with space lasers, right? This is the leader of the Republican Party. She's not being denounced by her colleagues, right? She may not be in leadership. She may not be Speaker of the House or minority leader, but they're standing by her. And today, when she was forced to defend her past decisions, defend her racistness, her belief in QAnon, her clear, just disgusting prior acts, right? All on Facebook, all on Twitter, out in the open, right? What was she doing in private if these are her open, public displays, right? And they gave her a standing ovation, reportedly, by a lot of people. There were a lot of people in that room. And then you have Lauren Boebert, right? She, okay, on both fronts, right? You have her bypassing metal detectors after literally the Congress was attempted to be overthrown. You have her, which metal detectors are common, right? I go by them every time I go into a stadium, every time I get on an airplane, half the time I go into schools, right? It's not ridiculous to have somebody need to go through a metal detector before they enter the halls of Congress, right? I think that makes a normal amount of sense, right? What are you doing? Why are you avoiding, right? You got nothing to hide, right? That's what they say to me all the time when I'm paranoid. I got nothing to hide. They can search me, right? That's the idea. Where you at, Lauren? You got nothing to hide, right? What she does have to hide is spending $22,000 this year, 38,000 miles for travel expenses, right? Not hotels, not 22,000 in total travel, just the miles, right? Anybody believe she drove 40,000 miles this year during a pandemic when for a month she couldn't even have events, right? And her predecessor, the person in office before her, 10 years, 12,000, right? 1 year, 22,000, 10 years, 12,000. That's not really lining up in my mind. I don't really need to go on, but you have Republicans supporting QAnon. You have McCarthy denying that he even knows about QAnon, even though he's denounced QAnon twice before. You have Trump standing by QAnon. Marjorie Taylor Greene supports QAnon. I mean, yeah, we don't need to focus our entire life on QAnon, but this is a radical organization that believes that Democrats and most of Hollywood are eating babies in some satanical ritual. Plus, that they're all pedophiles, right? I don't think we should have large sections of our government believing in that or supporting people that believe in that or really being comfortable with people believing in that in any way at all. So I don't know what to say about that. And the DCCC is attacking them for it, as they should. You know, I want to run on $15 minimum wage and an awesome stimulus package in DC statehood, but if we gotta attack them for QAnon, that's what they get for supporting it. So these are what radical Republicans look like. What do radical Democrats look like, right? You have AOC, radical liberal Raphael Warnock, right? I got some articles I pulled up. Here's Raphael Warnock, right, saying that they might be too radical for Georgia, right? But the things that he's too radical on are honestly like middle of the road, you know, just standard, you know, saying that he said GD America in a sermon, you know, in 2008, right? You have Leffler getting mad at him for him being black mostly, if I'm being honest. That's what I think it is, right? I mean, this is the article, right? That he's too radical and I'm just not seeing anything, right? We got some Israel stuff. Right, it's just a bunch of his sermons. Right? I don't really know, to be honest. And we got this one. We got some Newsweek. Right? I can't really tell you. So he doesn't want cash bails. He said that police kill more black people than white people. They definitely do. That's not radical. That's facts, right? Facts don't care about your feelings, as one of my YouTube counterparts might say. I think there was another one in here. right? That America has a racist pre-existing condition, right? I mean, look at all the Civil War memorials. That's the racism. That's a pre-existing condition, right? It's been around for decades, centuries, right? This is the radical left, right? You got AOC. AOC supports, you know, regular minimum wage increases, stopping the environment from exploding, right? That's the problem, is that these are just regular positions, right? They may be more aggressive than you want. They may be more aggressive than some Democrats and a lot of Republicans, but they're nothing like QAnon, I got to tell you that. They're nothing to that extent. All right, with that out of the way, let's get some quickie news this week. We got impeachment is moving forward with Trump at the center, obviously, right? We're impeaching him. The Republican Party seems kind of split. You have a certain number of people just saying that it needs to be thrown out. You have some, Liz Cheney, a couple others who at least seem moderately on board with the idea that the impeachment should move forward. McConnell previously, but I don't know that I have much faith in any of that. You got the New York City mayor election heating up, mayoral election. They're facing a lot of challenges in New York, right? You got to rebuild tourism, rebuild the service industry. You have BLM and the defund the police narrative that's really strong, to be honest, in New York. But I don't know that defund the police really means everything that people think. It's obviously not taking a police budget of $6 billion and making it $0 next year. I don't think there's any BLM supporters that are talking about doing that. If they are, I haven't found any in my research. And one of my favorite, definitely a dark horse, is Andrew Yang for that position, right? We have Yang from the Democratic presidential race last year, the $1,000 a month guy. I think that Andrew Yang makes a lot of sense for New York City. I think him being in charge of New York City is a really interesting pilot for the way that he thinks about helping drive a middle class, helping bring people and keep people out of poverty. I think that his positions are debatable, but overall he seems like a smart guy, having never met him obviously, who has something that he wants to achieve and is hell-bent on doing it. And if he gets to run a pilot program in New York City and take some of that police budget and uses it for a universal basic income, I think I would be in favor of that myself. And then to stick with New York, we have Andrew Cuomo, the governor of New York. He is facing a lot of scrutiny over some recent COVID changes, right? They appear to have misallocated up to 4,000 deaths from COVID-19 from non-nursing home to from nursing home to non-nursing home is how they allocated them. So when he was under all that heat for the nursing home apocalypse, basically, that was going on in New York City, they went about underreporting it. And there's some debate whether or not that was intentional, right? Whether or not it was in good faith. I don't think the evidence speaks for itself. It is very heavy on their favor for that one. And then during all this, he's had 9 different major health officials all resign. I think that's just his personality, right? His aggressive, pretty accusatorial personality. When you're looking at subordinates like the health department, you really have to work with those kind of individuals, I think, from a management standpoint. And I think that he just dropped the ball there, where with his style, with that New York City style, you're dealing with people that are dealing with a pandemic, right? You got to be a little more understanding. But we'll see. We'll see how they do with this vaccine rollout. It's looking better, but definitely was off to a rocky start. Now, let's get to the COVID overall, right? We got COVID back to the usual. We got 150,000 deaths. That's absolutely insane. We are down. We'll show you the COVID numbers right now. They're looking better every week, honestly, every day, really. You see this? This is just, I basically predicted this. Really sucks that I didn't have my first podcast in this area, but I think that this is really obvious. New York put out a study with their contact tracers that 70% of their cases are coming from small gatherings and that level of transmission. And so I think that it's really obvious that this is a spike from the compounding factors of Thanksgiving and Christmas, along with New Year's Eve. And now you're seeing that that's starting to tail off, right? One, you're losing Christmas here. We're 14, 20 days from Christmas, right? Here, we're, in this area, we lost Thanksgiving around here. So there's that dip, right? I think this is really obvious. If you look at deaths, right, this is not trending in quite the same direction. I think that's just a lag. I think that it's extremely likely deaths have only come down 10% off their 7-day high from a couple weeks ago, and actually just a couple days ago. And cases are almost 50% down from their 7-day high way back in the beginning of January. So I think that it's extremely likely that within the next 2 to 3 weeks that we will see this kind of significant decrease in daily COVID-19 deaths, which is obviously a fantastic sign and something that we should really be working to reinforce with good mask usage and following all the guidelines. So I also think that studying this when it comes to long term, what we need to adjust going forward is, as in the next pandemic, fingers crossed, another 100 years, or for the end of this coronavirus in other countries, right? We have to remember that the new variants that are coming is worrying for sure, right? You have them in South Africa, Brazil, and the United Kingdom. Two of those, the South African and Brazil, look like they are having a little bit less of an impact with the vaccines that have been tested in those regions, which is definitely concerning. But I think that all of that just goes to show that this is not an America problem, right? We're not going to be able to lock down our borders once we have all of our people vaccinated and everything like that, right? And as new variants come up in third world countries that aren't getting the vaccine rollout at the same rate that we are likely to be in a situation where they are at risk for developing variants that we're no longer immune from, right? You have an efficacy rate of between 50 and 70% against some of these variants, and it could be a lot worse. So we need to be vigilant. We need to make sure that we don't spread more, but we also need to have a focus on understanding that our international environment when it comes to vaccines is what's critical, right? Ebola scares, H1N1, all these kind of things come from other countries. Coronavirus variants could be the same way. So we need to understand that this has got to be a global attack, right? We have to make sure that we address this virus and stop new cases wherever they are, because every new case is a new opportunity for a variant. And I think that's just more evidence of the America first, America only, America alone policies of Donald Trump is really a problem, right? That's not an acceptable position for a president to have, especially when it comes to things like coronavirus, foreign policy, things like that, trade agreements, those kind of things. You got a little room with me, but we really have to unite with our allies, understand that we're about to have to spend a couple $1 billion, maybe more, vaccinating other countries that can't afford vaccines, right? Who is vaccinating, East African, South African countries that are war-torn, Syria, places in the Middle East that are still in wars, in civil wars? Those people have to be vaccinated, right? And unfortunately, or not, America should do it, right? I honestly, not unfortunately, that is an opportunity for America to lead the charge, not just domestically, not just being an example, but being a real leader in the free world, right? That's what we're supposed to be, leaders of the free world. We need to vaccinate the world. That should be our goal, right? As Americans, we're the ones that vaccinated the world, right? You want to talk about China virus and attacking another country. Why don't we have a narrative where another country created the virus and then America snuffed it out? That sounds like a good narrative to me. Speaking of vaccines, let's get an update on that. I'm going to stick with our good old Bloomberg. This is looking like the best resource. I've been looking around to find a better one, but honestly, the organization of this is just really good. So we're up 35 million, 27 million last week, right? So that's another 8 million from last week to this week, right? Another good sign. That's over a million a day. We're up to 1.34. That's an amazing sign, right? We want this to get up to 2-3 million if possible, right? They're talking about expanding access by adding 65,000 or 6,500, pharmacies to be able to distribute this. That's like your CVS, Rite Aid, Walgreens. I don't know the ones that aren't in Texas, but those are ones like that are people who are going to be further increasing our capabilities when it comes to vaccines, right? Texas still doing pretty well. We've actually dropped down a little bit. I'm not sure. We're not that far above the top half now. So I think obviously our numbers are pretty good. Some numbers are doing really good with first round, right? But I think this is mostly due to this. I was trying to trend this today, and it looks like this trends pretty well, where the higher the supply usage, the higher first dose. I don't know that anybody is particularly crushing distribution. You have a couple states that have just really insane supply uses of 90%, 80%. I really 85%. I really hope that they don't screw us. Honestly, I really hope that we don't end up having to like take away from other states because a couple of states just made a poor decision and over distributed their vaccine in the first dose. Again, I think it's pretty critical from all the studies that I've read that people get their second vaccine on time, right? Last, we're going to talk about where we're at with approvals. We're always looking out for the next approvals. We got J&J. They delivered their results. They're looking pretty good. Honestly, I think that these numbers, these 90% efficacy rates are just unreasonable, to be honest. These Pfizer, Moderna, that's that mRNA. They get an exact spike protein replication, right? But Johnson & Johnson, AstraZeneca, theirs look really good when it comes to keeping people out of the hospital, which is what really matters in my mind, is just keeping people from getting too sick, right? And with Johnson & Johnson, right, based on pass, it's looking like a early to mid-March approval, assuming everything looks good in their report. AstraZeneca, they're still waiting for the second approval. I saw this from other countries are looking at releasing this to younger populations only as their trial for the younger population is done, whereas with the older population, it's not. I don't really know where I stand on that, to be honest. I think there's an argument for getting it as many hands as possible and reducing the spread. But I also understand that is it really worth it if you're stopping a bunch of, 20 something, 30 something, 40 something people that are probably going to be fine. And then do they go out even more, right? It's kind of a double-edged sword there. So not really sure that I've come to the decision on that. We'll kind of see. Next, we'll get to, this will be our last big topic for today's episode. We're going to do Biden administration, right? What does their week look like? So the big thing going on this week, obviously, is the COVID-19 relief bill. I think that all signs are going really, really good. We reviewed the bill in some detail last week, right? You have some people who honestly are giving some really bad takes on the scale, especially once the Republicans submitted their smaller package, right? You have, right, Neil Irwin of the New York Times. He's a New York Times writer. he had an absolutely ridiculous comment that in an economy running hot, employers face shortages of workers and must bid up wages to attract staff. This, along with potential shortages of various commodities, can, in theory, fuel a vicious cycle of rising prices. He said this in response to risk that the bill would be too big. I don't remember the last time, at least not since I've been born, that we've been concerned about wages being too high. Do you remember that? I don't. I don't remember the last time we were talking about a wage short or a employee shortage, right? That just sounds like something that is a Republican talking point, to be honest, like an attempt to avoid the minimum wage. And then you have Susan Collins saying, she's a Republican senator, it's hard for me to see when we just passed $900 billion of assistance why we would have a package that big. Maybe a couple of months from now, we'll see the evidence and we need to do something significant, but I'm not seeing it now. So here's a couple things. First, Susan Collins, right? You're just not listening to your voters, right? This is where your voters are. Zoom in on this a little bit. Your voters want you to pass this, right? They don't want to wait. You have 70%. 70. Name the last thing you remember that 70% of people agreed on. Agreed that we need to pass a bill right now, that we don't need to wait for Republicans, right? 24% was the group that said we should wait a couple of months, right? 24% of the country agrees with you, Susan Collins. That's it. I got the other 70, 77 maybe, right? So this is just a ridiculous talking point, right? Let's look at what the difference between these two packages look like, right? This is what they look like. We have right here, we have 1.9. This is what's in and out. This is obviously a weird display, but to be honest, nobody's making graphics that I can use at this point. So 1,400 down to 1,000. Wage limit of 40,000. And remember, that's based on your 2019 tax returns, right? Is my understanding. They may shift it to 2020. So that means that if I was unemployed this year, I made under 40,000 because I might have made nearly zero if I was self-employed, especially. And now you're putting limits on it, right? I definitely understand the argument to putting some sort of limitation on the kind of individual who can get these stimulus checks, which there already is on here, right? I believe it's 300,000 for a family, but that seems like a lot. I agree. That seems like a really big amount, right? But just like me, when I was laid off this year, you have a situation where if people are unemployed, that doesn't matter, right? There's no accounting for that. There's no accounting for people who have fallen on hard times due to the pandemic, right? That I've seen. You also have a reduction in the unemployment. I think that this can be discussed, right? You have a lot of states where this is a really critical number. A lot of states where $100 might make a big difference, right? And this is a week. So that's $400 a month. That's a significant reduction, right? Can you take a $400 a month reduction? Minimum wage. Not really sure this is going to pass, to be honest. So I'm kind of leaving this out until I see whether or not this is even going to be included in the final bill. There's a lot of debate about whether or not it can be included in budget reconciliation. Your child support, right? A reduction in total child support given, which is honestly ridiculous. That's one of the biggest things preventing people from going back to work other than the pandemic itself, right? So you have $15 billion for small business owners specifically, as well as this OSHA standard that protects workers from companies that aren't doing anything to protect against coronavirus. I think this is really needed. I know a whole bunch of companies that as soon as it's allowed, as soon as they won't get absolutely lambasted, they'll remove all of them, right? They'll stop cleaning, stop wiping surfaces, stop doing temperature checks, right? I guarantee you that I don't want to speak to my company, but some of my past companies I think are very much on board with reducing COVID-19 protocols, distancing, everything like that, even stuff that's free, right? Let alone stuff that costs money, right? So then they got a 40 billion for the Paycheck Protection Program. I think that's great. I think it needs to be targeted. The disaster loans, I don't really know that much about that, to be honest. You have 170 billion for K through 12. I think this is insanely important, right? You have just a really high need in these schools, and that's not going away, right? That's not going away next year. You have a whole bunch of, we're not going to be fully vaccinated by August. We don't need people dying because schools have a budget shortfall and can't afford masks or sanitary spray or whatever else they need. I'm not an education professional, but obviously these needs are warranted considering our schools aren't open right now. And well, I take that back. They are open. Let's not discount the effort that educators are putting into teaching our students at home right now, right? Every school is open. I apologize. They're open. They're just not necessarily in person, right? So there's a big difference there. I need to get better about saying that. And they only won 20 billion, right? That's $150 billion reduction. I think that's a little insane. I know what our budget is. In the state of Texas. I understand what it costs to sanitize at my facility, and we don't need to do nearly what schools need to do from a sanitation and safety perspective. You have no state and local support, right? So this is police, firefighters, right? Paramedics that work for this city. You have any sort of auditing, any sort of... I see complaints constantly about an inability to get permits, right? That's what this is for. This is backing the blue. You want to talk about back the blue? You want to talk about defunding the police? This is what they're doing. They're defunding the police out from under you right now. If you're not angry about that, you're just not paying attention, or that thin blue line, that blue line flag, you need to rip that off your truck. You got rental assistance, right? That's obviously a huge reduction. There's SNAP extensions in here. I know that that's in here. Food stamps. I know that all this is in the White House side, even if it's not listed, because it's just such a small amount, right? Homeless aid. We are facing an eviction crisis. It's been pushed off, but eventually there's going to be people that aren't caught up in the recovery, that don't recover just right back to where they were, and they will be homeless, and we need to help them. Eviction moratorium extension, none of that in there. This is the food stamp. Oh, there's that in there already, food stamps, right? So I think all this is incredibly valuable. You have vaccinations, right? So that's the same. 50 billion in testing, that's the same. That's great. Good job, Republicans. You believe in coronavirus now that Donald Trump's out of office. Awesome. Community health work for funding long-term care and prison facilities, right? I think these are great. These are kind of tack-ins, but I think that it's pretty obvious that our prisons were attacked by this. Every single piece of the government has been end of life. That's why everybody's at home, because the coronavirus. To say that these institutions, these organizations are uninfected is obviously incorrect. And then you have expanded Affordable Care Act premium. You have $4 billion in mental health, substance abuse. I hear all this discussion about how locking people in their homes and not letting people hang out together is the real crisis, and not COVID, and not 3,000 people a day dying, but the suicides. Yeah, how's that $500 million reduction from the Republicans? How's that going? And then $20 billion for veterans and healthcare. Missing. Democrats, obviously the true supporters. So, with all of that, what would I have rather seen, right? We had this bill from the Democrats. We have the Republican counterproposal, right? If I'm Joe Biden, I want unity. I want to talk about bringing the country together, bringing politicians together, right? Bipartisan legislation. Come at me with some increases. Come at me with, we need farmer stimulus. We need rural internet. We need rural school preference. We need meat, dairy, grain. All those are down this year. I looked at it through September, right? Here, I can show you. USDA, they're down. All these prices on all these goods, all of them are down through September. That's the most up-to-date data I could find on through the USDA. And so all these are down. So Susan Collins. So all of you Republican senators and congresspeople who represent all these rural areas, where's your fight? Where's your fight for your constituents? I don't want a smaller bill. I'll take a bigger bill. You want me to spend more money in targeted areas to support your constituents? I'm a liberal elite. I'm a bi-coastal elite, not worried about the middle of America. Help me. Help me support liberal America. Show me. Show me where I can spend $2 trillion, $2.1 trillion. I give you a few $100 billion. You want to increase the spending? You want to spend more? Help our economy more? Help farmers, ranchers, small towns, right? Their tourism, their restaurants, right? They're facing the same thing that everybody else is, right? And where's their support, right? I'm willing to give it to you. Just tell me where to put it, right? And then instead of doing that, instead of helping Americans, instead of fighting, right? This is what Republicans are doing. This is what's happening. You have so sorry. All right, you have, oh my god. So annoying. Why isn't this being blocked? Fine. There. All right. So we just had yesterday the memorial for Capitol Police Officer Brian Sicknick, right? You had every single organization, MSNBC, CNN, all the news broadcasters, right? Pretty sure C-SPAN, everybody. They're all watching the ceremony, right? Understanding that somebody laid down their life for the protection of democracy, right? To make sure that voting matters, to make sure that our voices are heard. And instead of supporting and acknowledging the sacrifice that was made by this employees and all the Capitol, well, most of the Capitol police officers, you had Fox News, right? Talking about just any other crap, railing on Dr. Fauci, right? Talking about just anything to further divide, anything to make Americans just sick, right? Just sick over what's going on, right? Keeping their individuals afraid, keeping their viewers afraid. That's not what we're gonna do here. We're gonna make sure that you get the news, that you get the facts, and as always, you get the debunk of the day. All right, so we're gonna jump into it. Everybody's favorite segment, debunk of the day. This is a segment where I live debunk some conspiracy that's been circulating in the news recently. Some of them are some old favorites. Some of them are a little newer, a little more. That's what I get. All right. We got a classic. We got the sea level is not rising. All right. So we're going to do this live right now. We're going to show this. We'll just do, is the sea level rising? All right. So we got climate.gov. I'm sure they lie. Right. We'll go with NASA. We can go with, let's see, Royal Society. Maybe this is some sort of like third party thing. Oh, look at that. Bloomberg just wrote a story a couple days ago. All right. So again, we're doing this live. I haven't looked any of this up before. It's going to be a little touch and go, but I think this will be an easy one, right? So, bam. Here's a graph. 1880, 2020, right? They've been monitoring. This is with average satellite record from 1993 to present. You got 1880. They've been measuring with individual locations, with like buoys and stuff, basically. So we were flat through the 90s, and you can see, you know, we've been scaling up, right? Continuing this sea level rise, increase. Oh no, this is actually, yeah, this is the increase change in millimeters. So this is actually, oh, so this is actually showing that it was, yeah, so it was going down and now it's going up, right? Split on this date. So that makes sense. All right. You show flooding, got a lot of that. You got examples of why it's going to be really bad. I mean, I think that it's pretty, right? Global sea level increasing, thermal expansion, added water, meltwater, right? So this is a big one to me. I think that just the ice melting, if you've ever had a cup of ice, any of the ice that's touching the ground, right, that you're holding as you put it in there, it goes up, right? Obviously, if it melts, if it's floating ice, stays the same. But that's not what we're talking about. We're talking about ice like on snow caps, on mountains, glaciers, right? Things like that. All right, we got NASA, 3.3 millimeters a year. Right, satellite data, global dam, tide gauge data, right? Bam. It seems pretty normal. Sea level was actually going down before 1940. Now it's going up. I think that all of this pretty evident. Here you got a wide range. Obviously, I don't know why this is blurred out. There we go. You got this wide range. They're not really sure what's going on with sea levels. Pretty flat. I can't quite see that year. Let's see here if I can. This graph kind of sucks. That looks like 1890 to me, 1900, 1920, 1880. Yeah, so this is every 20 years. And then we'll go with Bloomberg, last one. So, observations, models. So it's not looking good. It's not looking good. It's getting hotter. Sea levels are rising. Gotta stop it, right? So, it's fun climate change action. Green New Deal is a great place to start. And lastly, this week, we will go back to what you can do this week. I missed it last week. I apologize. I did have the link in the description. But this week, we are supporting KIND, Kids in Need of Defense. So this, if you're a fan of supporting legal immigration, asylum seekers, a fan of not separating children, this is an organization for you, right? So this is one that spends its efforts and its donations to provide pro bono legal services to children who are separated, right? So 670 kids have been reunited. They also provide counsel for the students, right? Obviously, they have not been able to affect all the kids, but hopefully every day they affect more and more, help bring them together. We've had presidencies back to back with questionable judgment at best when it comes to immigration, and really back to back to back to back to back to back to back, we've been having some pretty terrible immigration policies. So help these kids out. Donate to this if you can. If you're a lawyer, get involved if possible. I'd love to see how we can help these guys as a community. That's it for today's episode. It's been an amazing week. It's been a week of a lot's gone on, right? Movement with COVID, movement with relief. I think it's been a pretty good week. And the fight's not over. Every day, we're here, 7 p.m. Central. If you like the content, as they say on YouTube, smash that subscribe button. I got a goal of 100 subscribers. That'll give me a dedicated YouTube link. I'll be back next week with another episode. Hope to see you there. Have a great day.